Chosen one. If someone disappeared from your life, if a relationship ended, if distance grew between you and people you once thought would always be there, or if life suddenly pulled you away from a place, routine, or chapter that once felt permanent, this message is for you. Separation can feel cruel when you do not understand its purpose. It can make you question everything. You wonder why something had to end, why the connection changed, why you were removed from a place you fought so hard to keep, or why people you once felt deeply connected to suddenly became strangers. But sometimes separation is not proof that you lost your path. Sometimes separation is part of the path. Sometimes distance appears because something can no longer grow in the same form. And sometimes life creates space before you are ready to create it yourself. The hardest part is that you usually cannot see this while you are still grieving what disappeared. In that moment, all you notice is the absence, the quiet phone, the changed routine, the person who is no longer there, the place you no longer return to. Familiarity feels safe, even when it was not truly good for you, because at least you knew how to live inside it. You knew your role. You knew what to expect. Separation removes that certainty. And uncertainty can feel more frightening than staying in something that no longer fits. That is why people often fight to hold on to situations that are already ending. Sometimes they are not fighting for love or connection. They are fighting against the fear of what comes next. Chosen one. Not every ending is asking to be reversed. Some endings are asking to be understood. Think about the connections that once felt essential but became clearer after distance. Maybe you were constantly adjusting yourself to keep the peace. Maybe you were giving far more than you were receiving. Maybe you were staying somewhere that kept you anxious, distracted, insecure, or smaller than you wanted to be. When you are too close to a situation, you adapt to it. You normalize it. You make excuses because accepting the truth might require a decision you are not ready to make. Distance interrupts that cycle. It allows your mind to quiet down enough to notice what constant closeness was hiding. And sometimes what you discover is uncomfortable. You realize that what you miss is not always what was good for you. You miss the familiarity. You miss the routine. You miss having something predictable to return to. But chosen one, missing something does not always mean you are supposed to go back. You can care about what happened and still know you need to move forward. You can appreciate a chapter and still understand that it has ended. You can love someone and still recognize that the relationship cannot continue in the same way. Growth often requires you to hold two truths at once. This mattered to me, and I still need to let it go. Separation can also challenge your identity because you do not only attach yourself to people, you attach yourself to who you are around them. Maybe you were the helper, the partner, the listener, the responsible one, the person who never left. Maybe a certain environment gave you a role, even if that role limited you. When separation happens, that identity can disappear too. Suddenly you have to ask, who am I without this? That question can feel terrifying, but it can also become the beginning of something important. Sometimes you are maintaining a connection, partly because you did not know who you would become without it. Distance forces you to find out. It removes the structure that was holding your identity in place and gives you space to rebuild. Chosen one. This is why the period after separation can feel strangely empty. Your old habits may no longer make sense. Your social world may change. Your future may look less certain. You might feel like you lost part of yourself. But maybe the part you lost was not your deepest self. Maybe it was simply an identity built around adaptation. Maybe separation is giving you the chance to discover preferences you never had room to explore, boundaries you never had courage to create, ambitions you kept postponing, or qualities that could not grow inside your old life. That process takes time. At first, the silence can feel heavy, but silence also reveals things. Chosen one, do not rush to fill every gap. When something leaves, there is often a temptation to replace it immediately. A new person, a new distraction, a new plan. Anything that prevents you from feeling the empty space. But if you fill that space too quickly, you may recreate the same pattern with a different face. You may choose what feels familiar instead of what actually fits. Sometimes the purpose of separation is not only to remove something, it is to give you enough time to change before the next thing arrives. This is where you begin noticing your patterns. You see what you kept accepting because you were afraid of losing connection. You see where you were overgiving. You see what you were ignoring because staying felt easier than leaving. And once you see those things clearly, you have the chance to choose differently. Chosen one, some separation can also be protective in ways you may never fully understand. You cannot see every future that could have happened. You cannot know exactly where a certain path would have led if it continued. You do not need to create a dramatic explanation for every ending, but you can accept that your perspective is limited. Sometimes something simply stopped working. Sometimes that is enough. You do not always need perfect closure before you are allowed to move forward. Closure does not always come from another person or one final conversation. Sometimes closure is simply deciding that an old chapter no longer gets unlimited access to your attention. Separation can also reveal which connections are capable of growing with you. Some relationships can survive change. There is honesty, curiosity, respect, and room for both people to evolve. Other relationships only work while you remain predictable. The moment your needs change, your boundaries become stronger, or your identity shifts, the connection becomes unstable. That tells you something. Real connection does not require permanent sameness. If every step toward becoming more yourself creates conflict, then perhaps the closeness depended too much on the version of you that required less. That can hurt to accept, but it can also set you free. Chosen one, sometimes the purpose of separation is simply to stop you from abandoning yourself. You may have stayed because you were loyal, because you cared, because you did not want to hurt anyone, because you believed leaving meant failure. But loyalty without self-respect can slowly become self-neglect. There are moments when choosing distance is not punishment. It is preservation. And even when the distance was not your choice, it can still teach you that you cannot keep sacrificing your inner stability just to maintain external connection. There may still be people you think about, people you wonder about, people you imagine returning to one day. That is normal. You do not have to erase someone from your memory to move forward. But be careful with nostalgia. Nostalgia remembers the best moments and quietly edits out the reasons distance became necessary. It remembers closeness and forgets confusion. It remembers warmth and forgets exhaustion. If something returns to your life, meet it as the person you are now, not as the person who once needed it. Ask whether the connection has actually changed. Ask whether you have changed. Ask whether there is space for something healthier, or whether you are simply being invited back into the same cycle. Chosen one, the purpose of separation is not always permanent separation. Sometimes people reconnect after growth. Sometimes circumstances change. Sometimes a relationship becomes possible in a different form. But if that happens, it should not require you to become your old self again. Anything that truly belongs in your next chapter should be able to meet who you have become. Otherwise, it is not a new chapter. It is repetition. And repetition may be exactly what the separation was trying to interrupt. If you are still in the middle of this process, be patient. You do not have to understand everything yet. Meaning often arrives slowly. One day, you notice that you are calmer. Another day, you realize you no longer tolerate something that once controlled your life. You meet different people. You make a different decision. You discover an opportunity that would never have fit inside your old world. And suddenly, the distance begins to make more sense. Not because you are happy about everything that happened, but because you can finally see what became possible afterward. Chosen one, maybe the separation happened because you needed to hear yourself again. Maybe you needed to stop building your identity around one person's presence. Maybe you needed to learn that losing access to someone does not mean losing your value. Maybe you needed enough distance to see that you were not asking for too much. You were simply asking in the wrong place. Maybe the chapter had already taught you what it came to teach, and staying longer would only have repeated the lesson. You may never know every reason, but you can still decide what the separation becomes. You can let it harden you, or you can let it clarify you. You can treat it as proof that connection is dangerous, or you can use it to become more intentional about who receives your trust. You can keep staring backward, or you can slowly begin asking what the empty space is inviting you to build. Chosen one, some separations are endings, but others are thresholds. They look like loss because you are standing on the side that is disappearing. But eventually, you move far enough forward to see that the distance was creating a new direction. So if something has been removed from your life and you still do not understand why, do not force an answer today. Let time reveal what urgency cannot. Let the silence teach you. Let the distance show you what closeness was hiding. And do not assume that every separation means you were abandoned. Sometimes you are being released from something you had already outgrown. Sometimes you are being protected from repeating the same version of your life. And sometimes, chosen one, the space that hurt the most was exactly the space your next chapter needed in order to begin.